Today, we're going to look at the most critical 2/100ths of a second in your shot cycle. I'm going to do most of the talking. Let's start by looking at one of the best archers in the world, the 2016 Olympic gold medalist, Recurve Shot. You can see his deliberate actions as he sets up, draws the bow, anchors, and eases through the clicker. Then you can see his smooth follow-through. What you missed, however, was the most important part, the time between the release and when the arrow actually cleared the bow. You missed it because it was too fast, about 2/100ths of a second. The fact is that many archers focus so much on their setup that they think of the release as the end of the shot. But they're wrong. The release is the beginning of the shot. You're actually going to hear me refer to 2 times a lot during this video, so I want to get them straight before we go on. 2/10ths of a second and 2/100ths of a second. 2/10ths of a second is the time from when the clicker goes off to when the arrow completely leaves the bow. This includes the reaction time, which varies a little from archer to archer, and the 2/100ths of a second that it actually takes to make the release and for the arrow to leave the bow. If you're looking at a release video in PAL format, as many archer videos are, 2/10ths of a second is just 5 frames. Let's take a look at those 5 frames in Recurve Shot. As you see here, the clicker goes off, and it takes about 3 frames before he reacts. That's extremely fast reaction time, about 120 thousandths of a second. Then it takes another frame, another 40 thousandths of a second, to release the string. So 4 frames after the clicker, the archer finally completes his release and the arrow is ready to go. Then, in the 5th frame, the arrow races off and makes it several meters down the range. As you can see, standard video is too coarse to capture the details of the release. They're simply too fast. In fact, the entire action is faster than the blink of an eye, which, by the way, is 3/10ths of a second. Just for fun, let's prove that. Let's show a video of an archer doing her release and sync it with the video of that same archer blinking her eyes. Let's look at it again. Now let me tell you what you think you saw. You think you saw the eyes blink and then the shot. That's because, like many people, you're looking for visible signs of motion to judge a shot. Moving of the hands, tipping of the bow. The trouble is, these things all happen long after the arrow is gone, about 10 times longer than it takes for the arrow to leave. Let's look at that blink of an eye, frame by frame. We start with the clicker. The blink gets a good head start, but the archer catches up. At 5 frames, the arrow is gone. Not until 7 frames is the blink done. Now that I have your attention, let's look at what happens during this blink of an eye. And let's see what we can learn about the actions before and after this critical time that can help us execute the shot better. For starters, let's understand that these times are pretty universal within a reasonable range. It doesn't really matter much who the archer is. The timeline is about the same. To prove this, let's take a look at a top American male archer, Brady Ellison, and compare him to a top Korean female archer, Kibo Bae, and see how these drastically different people follow the same timeline. So you can see it, I'm going to slow it down about 15 times. What you'll see here is about 1/2 of a second stretched out over 7 seconds. Pretty similar, huh? Did you see how long after the arrow was gone before the bow tipped over? To truly understand this critical time and what goes on, let's look at it in slower detail, about 5,000 frames per second. Even at this speed, things move rather quickly. But the key is to recognize how little the archer moves before the arrow is gone. Let's take a look at a series of archers, the before and the after. One standard video frame difference. That's about 4/100ths of a second difference. Notice, there's no appreciable movement in any of these archers, but the arrow's gone. No one has reactions fast enough to respond to anything during the shot. Human reaction time is 2/10ths of a second. International track and field organizations recognize that even when charged with adrenaline, a distinctly bad thing for an archer, no one has reflexes as fast as 1/10th of a second. So they flag any runner who starts within 1/10th of a second of the starting signal with a false start. In 1/10th of a second, an archer's shot is done. So we all understand the shot is fast, and we can't react to anything during the shot. But also, we can't do pre-planned activities in sequence either. We'll never do them consistently enough. The clock is too fast. If we try to do two actions in sequence, they won't be consistent enough. Let's consider this simple action. Drumming my fingers on the table. It's easy and very rhythmic. We all believe we're doing this consistently. We all believe I'm hitting 3 beats in relatively perfect succession. But am I? Let's look at the soundtrack and see what it has to say. Here is a nominal case. A total event takes 150 milliseconds, with the middle beat exactly in the middle, at 0.075 seconds. Now let's look at a series of 5 of these. You can quickly see that what we thought was all the same is completely different. No two patterns are alike. The total durations vary from 140 milliseconds to 165 milliseconds, or a range of 2.5 hundredths of a second. That means I'm varying here more time than it takes for the arrow to actually leave the bow. Even my rhythm is bad. So even when conducting these simple, unstressed rhythmic patterns, I have variations that exceed the entire time it takes for an arrow to clear the bow. That may be close enough for my ear to say I'm okay, but it's nowhere near precise enough for an arrow. So let's talk about what we can control, the before and the after. Let's start with before the shot. Remember, the speed of the shot is much shorter than the human reaction time. You can never respond to anything during the shot. So make sure everything is right before you start the release. If it isn't right before the release starts, it won't be right during the release either. Pull through the clicker in the direction you want to move when you release and follow through, because that's the direction you're going to move at the critical instant of the release. It's extremely difficult to coordinate or sync multiple activities in a precise manner. So make your release a single action, letting go. Everything else is just a response to the stresses at the instant of the release. Now let's look at the after the shot. Stay alive and strong through the release and the launch of the arrow. There are 3 important reasons for this. First, there's a long reaction time between the clicker and the release. Prevent yourself from giving up and changing during that reaction time. Second, to keep the mind and body on task through the shot. Third, to create a cushion of time to prevent post-shot activities from blurring into the release. So the actions before and after the shot are to make sure that the 2/100ths of a second from the release of the arrow to the arrow being on its way start at the same point and end at the same point each and every time. These are important principles. How well you adhere to these ideals determines how consistent and how successful your shot will be.